And now, a dramatic reading by Professor Victor. Traveling in a fried-out combi on a hippie trail, head full of zombie. Wait, hold on. I don't think they mean zombie like we mean zombie. Just hold on a second. Met a strange lady, maybe nervous. Oh, okay, here we go. Better run, better take cover. We're good. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it's going to give you a pretty good sense of what we do here at the Horror Movie Syllabus. In short, we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. But this is our Doctorate Level selection series. This is where we revisit a subgenre that we've already talked about. We've already done a video on, and then we revisit it, do a quick recap of what we talked about previously, and then do a new 4th Doctorate Level selection. Another movie that's usually a little bit deeper cut or lesser known, or maybe just a little bit more newer release, and something that we can talk about and add it to the subgenre and continue the conversation. And that's what we're doing today. We're revisiting the zombie subgenre. And these are the other zombies. These are the non-Romero zombies, because we went ahead and gave George Romero, his movies, their own subgenre, because they're so influential in horror. They're so influential and critical to what the zombie subgenre is. It basically defined it or redefined it. And so we wanted to leave some space to talk about other zombies, non-Romero zombies, and that's what we did in the previous video. And we talked about the zombie subgenre as a whole and how it's kind of saturated, man. It's got a lot of movies in there. I guess because they're cheap and easy to make, and because like a lot of people connect with them and they're fun. And then, they're kind of formulaic. There's a lot of tropes involved in them, basically kind of lumbering zombies versus fast zombies, or mindless versus maybe someone a little more intelligence. Maybe a man is the greatest monster. That tends to be a trope that comes up a lot, but a lot of common tropes or threads in these movies. And all of these tropes and concepts are repeated a lot because there's a lot of these kind of movies. And I think it's because the zombie definition is so malleable. You can have these fast zombies, you can have slow zombies, you can have mindless zombies, you can have all these different kinds of things, and you can have them all be allegories for different things. And George Romero, again, set the bar for that. But there's a lot of times where the movies tend to have some sort of allegory or message or social commentary wrapped up into whatever the zombie apocalypse is, which again, another trope, the zombie apocalypse, post-apocalyptic, dystopia, etc., etc. A lot of stuff, but the good ones tend to shine through. And that's what we were talking about in the previous video, is that every now and then you get a zombie movie that really raises the bar, that shines through, that kind of rises above all the chaff that is the zombie subgenre and really makes an impression. And we talked about 3 of those movies in the previous video, and we're going to talk about them again. Quick recap right now. The first zombie movie that we talked about in our previous video was Zombie 2. And we talked about how Zombie 2 is an unofficial Italian sequel to Dawn of the Dead, even though I kept calling it Night of the Living Dead in the video, embarrassingly enough. But Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy, and they made this unofficial sequel to kind of capitalize on the notoriety of it, because it was released as Zombie there, and this is now Zombie 2. But it really is its own movie. And we talked about how that can be a little confusing and how it annoys people like me, but that the movie itself is still something of a cult classic, largely because of its gore. It's directed by Lucio Fulci. We talked a little bit about him and how he's known for gore, and how there's a couple of scenes in here that really stand out, notably the eye scene and the zombie shark scene. That's the one that really gets everybody's attention. That's got my attention for sure. And these fun gore effects are really what stand out and make the movie elevated above a lot of the other zombie chaff that we talk about, like a lot of these knockoff Italian zombie movies. This one really stands out. It's got a plot, but not much of one. It's pretty thin. It's got some drama in there that's pretty mid. It's really the gore and these scenes that stand out and make it noteworthy, make it memorable, and made it find a place on the syllabus. The next zombie movie that we talked about was Return of the Living Dead. And this one is, it started out as a comedic take on the Night of the Living Dead zombie idea and kind of not quite a spoof, but a comedy version of it. And it's become a cult classic in its own right because of how good it wound up being. Again, we've got some really fun gore effects here, the Tar Man being a really big standout here. But this movie knows it's having how to have fun and how to gross out its audience, and it's delivering on that. We talked a little bit about Linnea Quigley, who is a kind of a stand-up performer in the movie, partly because of her look with her schlock of red hair, and partly because of her naked dance. That's something that really stands out in this movie. But the big thing about this movie and makes it like historically important is that this is where you establish that zombies eat brains. This is where that starts. This is where it comes from, and this is where the movie really kind of elevates from just being a kind of a jokey take on zombies to being something more. And of course, it spawned off on a series of movies that are subpar compared to the original. But this original is a classic. They are apparently remaking this, and I'm kind of bracing for that one. But the original is a must-see classic. And the last zombie movie we talked about was 28 Days Later. And this one was directed by auteur Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland. So it's got a bit of a pedigree on it. It's got some really amazing stars. Cillian Murphy's in there, Brendan Gleeson, Naomi Harris, Christopher Eccleston. So it's got some talent behind it, which of course elevates it a little bit and makes it feel like a little bit more than your standard zombie schlock. And it is. It really is hammering home that man is the greatest monster concept. It's got some really cool zombie effects. It was famous for fast zombies, running zombies. That was a big controversial thing in there. And then the debate of whether or not it actually really is zombies because they are more of a rage virus zombie rather than the undead. And I don't split hairs on this. I call them zombies. If it walks like a zombie, it talks like a zombie. If it runs like a zombie, it's a zombie. So we call this a zombie movie, and I think most people would accept it as a zombie movie. But that controversy was there. At the end of the day, it's a great movie. It spawned off a really good sequel, and then there's apparently another one coming out as of the time of this recording. Another one's coming out in a few months. I'm a little worried about that one, but the creative team is back for it, which gives me a little bit of hope because this original one is a standout. It's one of my favorite zombie movies, and it's definitely another must-see. So that's going to do it for our recap of the zombie movies we talked about in our previous video, but now let's get to our doctorate level selection. Our doctorate level selection for the zombie subgenre, the non-Romero zombie subgenre, is The Girl with All the Gifts. The Girl with All the Gifts came out in 2016 and was directed by a British director that I don't really know or was familiar with, but it was written by Mike Carey based on his own book. Mike Carey, who is a comic book writer who wrote the Lucifer comic book series, which is a spin-off of the Sandman series, one of my favorites, and the Lucifer series is fantastic. Mike Carey, good writer. I haven't read the book this is based on, but he did work on the screenplay as well for this movie, and that gave me some interesting hopes when I first saw this movie, and they paid off because this movie is a really interesting and fresh-feeling take on the zombie subgenre. Now, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a post-apocalyptic future where a military base is doing some research to try to find a cure or vaccine for the zombie virus that has taken over the world and pretty much destroyed it for the last 10 years. And the facility gets overrun by zombies, and a couple of the doctors have to run, and they've got with them this young girl who may hold the key to the zombie virus vaccine, and she's very special, but there is a lot more to her that's going on, and she is a volatile person to have around, and hijinks abound as they go on these adventures trying to escape. But I'll stop there so as to not spoil it for you in case you haven't seen it. But the movie has a fresh take on the zombie subgenre by giving us these characters that are, well, zombie children. I'm going to just say it because I do think the marketing kind of tipped you off to the fact that there are zombie children in this movie, and they are not mindless zombies, but they are fast. This has kind of the fast zombies like 28 Days Later does, but they are intelligent, and then they lose their control when they get hungry. Kind of like iZombie, actually, the TV show, a little bit now that I think about it. So it's not exactly super original, but it feels fresh in the way that they did this by giving us this relationship between the child, who is a zombie, but also still retaining her humanity, and Gemma Arterton playing the teacher, who is a scientist who helps them escape and run from the zombie outbreak that overtakes the facility that they're working on them at. And it's really interesting because you've got, first of all, really strong cast. Like I said, Gemma Arterton playing the teacher, and she just has a certain charm to her. I've always liked her. And then you've got Glenn Close playing the other research doctor, who is bringing frankly, a certain gravitas and legitimacy to this project, which isn't necessarily the biggest budget, but doesn't look bad at all. More on that in a bit. But she just kind of legitimizes, this movie, raises it from being just a standard zombie movie just by her presence, really. And then Senia Nanua, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right. I hope I am. As a 13-year-old girl when they made this movie back in 2016, is outstanding in this. She really is a revelation. She's just bringing a certain charm and energy and vivaciousness to this undead role. Or it's really a debate on that. I don't want to spoil the movie too much, of course, but it really feels fresh because you've got these actors in there and they're really taking the time to build out the interpersonal relationships and the drama of this, the melodrama of this, and that's what gives it a lot of its fresh angle. Now, that said, it's also not straying too far from the formula, too. You've got a post-apocalyptic future. You've got the military versus these mindless zombies wandering around. You've got the gore. You've got some aspects of man might be the greatest monster. It's in there a little bit. But it's really interesting that they kept all of these tropes and then tried to take just kind of a spin on it. Rather than doing something completely revelatory, they wanted to put their own stamp on it. And I think they're very effective in doing that. But they also want to kind of homage what came before. And I'll use a word homage because I think it's pretty blatant that they're trying to make references to other famous zombie movies. Right off the bat, the facility, it feels very much like Day of the Dead, the Romero movie Day of the Dead. You get this idea of these researchers studying zombies and the military, they're kind of protecting them and running the show. And you feel that right off the bat. And then when you see the zombies and how they attack and everything like that, and also the military aspect of this, it feels very 28 Days Later. You're getting a lot of 28 Days Later in terms of like the style of it and just the way the zombies move and all that stuff, the fast transformations and stuff. And the viral infection, in this case, I think it's a fungal infection that's doing it. So it's a little bit different, but it's still in that fungal infection thing. The way they explore that is all very interesting, but it does have a reminiscence of 28 Days Later. And again, I think it's intentional. And then at one point they went up in a mall full of zombies, very much Dawn of the Dead. So, and again, I think they're doing it intentionally. I think they're wearing their influences on their sleeve in a good way, in a way that I felt like was a fun nod and not like a ripoff. And so I really liked that quite a bit. But what really gives it the new energy, the reason that I'm bringing it up, the reason we're talking about it today, is these zombie kids and the way that they retain their intelligence and their personality, and then how they can kind of be self-aware of these things is fascinating. It's interesting because you kind of get a hint of what their lives are like, and then of course how things change as the facility falls and they go out on the road. It's really fascinating to see how this character develops, this zombie character develops, and she's your main character. And again, it gives it kind of a freshness to it. And it's a really well-made movie. Again, I don't think it's a very high-budget movie, but it looks really good. There's some beautiful shots in this movie and some really great camera work here. Some of the CGI looks a little bit dodgy, but it's so quick and everything that most of it looks really, really good that it's not a problem. It really, really isn't. This movie looks good, and they've done a good job of giving some really scary scenes too, some really creepy stuff. There is some good things with the transformation because again, the transformation happens extremely quickly, and it gets really creepy to see somebody transform into a zombie. And I really liked how they use that to build up the tension, and then how they'd have just a lot of like tense scenes. And some of the science in here might be a little bit wonky, a little bit made up. Who cares though? Like, because again, I'm feeling this movie. I'm really into it. I think that they found that tension line and wrote it really well, the line between tension and drama, and then they'd give you just enough action to really satiate you. I don't know. The ending is interesting. I think it's probably a little controversial. I don't want to go into because I don't want to spoil it, but I think I like how the ending ends, but I think that it's a debate of whether or not it's fully satisfying, but I found it satisfying. I think that it's a good way to end the movie, and again, I don't want to say how I feel about it too much because again, I don't want to spoil it, but I did find the ride of the movie very interesting. And again, while it might not be super original, I don't think it's trying to be super original. I don't think it's trying to be completely different. I think it's just trying to do just a little bit of a slightly different take or a slightly different focus on the idea of the zombie movie, on the zombie tropes. And they did it in a way that I thought worked extremely well. I'm not alone in this. The critical acclaim for this movie was very, very high. It has very good reviews. And horror fans who are familiar with that really seem to like it. I haven't heard anybody saying anything bad about the movie, but I don't hear enough about it. Like, it doesn't have a lot of crazy buzz. Again, there's a zombie glut, right? So people are kind of burnt out on zombie movies. I'm a little burnt out on zombie movies, if I'm being honest with you. It takes a lot for me to find a movie to be noteworthy and be a zombie movie, to give it my time, because I'm kind of burned out on them, frankly. And there's still good ones, but it's just, there's a lot. And so for one to stand out, it's got to be kind of special. And I think this one is special. I think the performances really raise the bar on this. I think the filmmaking is quite solid. Again, I forget the name of the director. If I can remember, maybe I'll put it on the screen. But it's good work, for somebody who I think does mostly television. It's really good work here. The looks are really good, and then the story is tight. The story is good. Mike Carey again delivering. I would be interested in reading the book now, even though from what I understand, the book is a little bit more about all the characters' perspectives and not just mostly focused on the girl. But the girl works. The actress works. She's very, very good here. Everything is working gangbusters in this movie. And so it really stands out to me as quality work, a cut above the rest, something that deserved to be brought up higher on the syllabus as a doctor level selection. So if you've seen The Girl with All the Gifts, let me know if you agree. Again, I have yet to come across somebody who didn't like the movie. Maybe you don't think it's as good as I think it is, but I would like to hear your thoughts on that. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. If you like zombie movies at all, and again, it's got the gore and stuff in there too, so it's not necessarily the easiest of watch if you're sensitive to that stuff. Maybe it's not for you, but it is a really good movie. I really like it quite a bit, and I think more people should check it out. So if you haven't, check it out soon. So that's our pick for the doctorate level selection of the non-Romero zombie movies, the zombie subgenre. But I'm going to bring up an extra credit one as well because there's a lot to choose from. But this one really stood out. It's a new one, and it really made a name for itself. There was a lot of buzz for it. When I finally got around to seeing it, I had to admit I understood where the buzz was coming from. The movie is Mads, MADS, and the way it's put with the capital M and the capital S, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing it right, but I couldn't figure that out. And it came out in 2024, so it just came out very recently. And it was written and directed by David Moreau, who did the movie Them or Ills that we talked about on the channel previously. He also did the American remake of The Eye. That one's not quite as impressive, but he's done some good work before, and this one was one that I kind of waited on, and it's interesting. It doesn't seem like it has a ton of buzz. Like when I started doing research on it, I couldn't find a whole lot. It doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. Like I was trying to figure out how do I actually say the title. Is it Mads? We're just going to say Mads. But if you haven't seen it before, the movie starts out with a guy who's pre-gaming before a party. He's getting high, and then as he's driving to the party, he picks up a girl who looks like she's kind of hurt or sick, and she kind of goes nuts and winds up losing her. But then he starts to not feel so well, and he goes to his party. But then this girl winds up showing up at his house, and then all these crazy things start happening, and there's these military people going on. He starts feeling worse and worse and worse, and it's clearly something has infected him, and he's starting to get into turning into, well, frankly, apparently a zombie. But we're going to go ahead and stop there as to not spoil it for you. And as you could tell, my description of this movie sounded a little frenetic and kinetic, and that's by design because that's how this movie is. This is a French movie, and it's all shot in one shot, or at least made to look like it's all in one continuous shot, unbroken. And that gives the movie a certain energy, a certain vivaciousness and sense of urgency. It really ramps up the tension and gives it a certain vibe and feel and pace that is kind of breakneck for a large part of the movie. It starts out really quick. Like, the guy gets high and then he gets in his car and he finds this girl and then it gets really crazy pretty quick. And that is what's leading this movie into a certain notoriety, right? I think it gets a lot of credit and buzz because of this one shot gimmick. And I love long takes. I think they're great, but I've seen movies do this before, like the 1917, that movie came out recently, and not recent, a couple of years ago now, but all the one shot gimmick. And I feel like it can be a little limiting for the story. And I think that's true here too. Like the lighting is sometimes bad in this movie. The film kind of looks grainy and dark and weird because it's all being shot in one take and you can't have lights around because you're moving the camera around so much. The storytelling gets hampered a little bit too. Like sometimes you don't know what's going on. Sometimes something has to be spelled out for you and it kind of seems a little expository and kind of clunky because, again, you're not cutting the camera, so you can't shortcut things. There's times where people are walking or riding a bike or driving or whatever, and they have to get from one location to another. And you're just following them because this movie's not going to cut. And I know that people complained about violent nature for doing that, kind of just following somebody walking around. And the same thing happens here, but it's pretty minimized. And the movie does use the gimmick to its advantage as well. So while it may hamper the storytelling and some of the filmmaking a little bit, it also gives you a fresher perspective. Again, this is kind of what I've been focusing on today, is kind of a fresh perspective on the zombie tropes that are kind of tired and kind of played out because it's so saturated and so many movies. But this fresh perspective is enhanced by this one take this one shot format, because it really ratchets up the anxiety in the movie. This movie's like anxiety inducing. When you're watching it, you feel anxious, you feel that anxiety because your character is feeling anxiety. And as he's slowly starting to transform, and it is a slow transformation, you're starting to kind of ride with him. You're going on this ride with him, and it is a ride. And again, it starts off really fast, really strong, and then it did lose me a little bit in the middle when I saw it. It did, and I was like, I don't know about this one. I don't know about the buzz and everything. But then they picked up, in the final act, it's finished strong. And part of why it finished strong is because of the way the infection spreads. It spreads like the normal virus infection would, scratches and bites and stuff like that. But it really has this shift in perspective. And again, I don't want to spoil the movie too much, but let's just say that at some point the movie shifts perspective, and then it shifts perspective again. And it kept doing it right when I needed to do that, right when I felt like, okay, this is starting to get a little played out, and I'm kind of done with this. I'm not done with it, but I kind of like, okay, I feel like you've kind of run your course here. The perspective would shift, and the movie would just immediately get energized again. And it made for some really interesting movie twists, if you will. Again, I'm trying to dance around this a little bit, but there's like some performances that are better than others. Like you meet a character early in the movie, and I'm kind of like, I'm not really that into the character, and I don't think the acting's all that great. And then later on, that character comes back, and all of a sudden, I'm very invested, and I think the performance is fantastic. The way they have these zombies, again, the transformation is slow, so it's like you're kind of still normal-ish, but then like you'd go through these fits, right? And it's like you go through these fits where you start giggling, or you start hissing, and you become very wicked, you know what I mean? And then you'll snap out of it a little bit, and then you'll kind of slide back into it again. It's a really cool way to see like this loss of humanity, kind of like losing your grip on your personality and your consciousness and who you are. And it leads for some really creepy, great scenes, especially in that final act. They really nail some great tension and some great creepy scares and some unsettling things in this movie that work really, really well. There's some good gore in this movie too, but it really is the tension and the adrenaline in this movie from the one shot and from the action scenes that really give this movie the punch that I think is what gives it all the good buzz. Like when this movie came out, like there was a lot of people talking about it. There was a lot of buzz on it. And that's why I'm surprised there's not like a wiki page and there's not more about it. I really wanted to learn more about the how to make the movie, how they made the movie, and some of the stuff like that. And I couldn't find a lot on it. To be honest, I didn't do a lot of digging, but I couldn't find a whole lot about it. And I'm curious about it because part of the fun of this is trying to figure out how they did that, how they did some of the camera tricks, how they did some of the effects and some of the stunts and stuff like that without cutting the camera. It's an ambitious movie. Do I think it nailed everything? No, but it definitely got way more right than it didn't. Those lulls that I mentioned in the middle movie, they're really nothing in the grand scheme of things because this movie leaves you with a good taste in your mouth at the end because of the way it wraps up at the end. And I think it wraps up very, very strong. I won't spoil it, of course, but I think that the ending is really good. That final act gets really tense, really crazy, really scary, and good, just really good, And yeah, I just kind of think about this the whole movie, like there's a moral to the story. It's just don't give strangers rides. If this guy just kept driving and not stopped his car, everything would have been just fine. But it wasn't, and it's a fun movie. Like again, it's not really doing something dramatically different. It's just telling the same thing and doing the same zombie tropes in a way that feels fresher, that feels a little bit more energized and like trying to do something just a little bit different, just enough to kind of give it a fresh angle and give it some energy, give it some life, and elevate it just a little bit above the crowd of zombie movies. I think this movie really nailed that. It's a fun ride. It's a quick ride. And I think that it may not be for everybody. Again, it's kind of anxiety inducing. Like it really is a tense movie. But if you can roll with that, I think you'll have a really good time with Mads. And if it's not pronounced Mads, let me know in the comments how it's pronounced if you know, because it's just so stylishly written, MADS and the capital M and capital S. It's weird. So let me know if I'm saying things wrong because I don't want to have to keep saying it wrong. But also let me know what you thought of Mads if you've seen it. I bet you a lot of you have because again, it was pretty popular when it came out. There's a lot of conversation about it, a lot of buzz. Let me know what you think. Is it as good as I think it is? Do you guys think it's as good as I think it is? Or did you have problems with it? Let me know in the comments below. So that's going to do it for our revisiting of the zombie subgenre, the non-Romero zombie subgenre. I do like zombie movies when they're really good. I even like bad zombie movies. To be honest with you, I've just kind of played out on them because there's been so many of them over the last like 2 decades that it takes something for them to really resonate with me and stand out to me. And these movies did. And so I know there's a few other ones out there. By all means, let me know some other ones that you think are kind of worth the time and a little bit above the grade to visit, because I'll be interested in checking those out in the future. But right now, we're going to check out a horror trivia pursuit card. It's that time of the video where I read a horror trivia pursuit card live on camera and try to answer it without cutting, so you know I didn't cheat. And of course, we're going to go with the monster category because we're talking about zombies, so of course we're going to go with the monster category. And here's our question. What actor portrayed the vicious vampire Severin in 1987's Near Dark? I'm pretty sure that I know the answer to this question. I'm pretty confident about this one. And this is Near Dark is a classic. We did talk about it on the channel in the vampire subgenre. It is an underrated movie, I feel, because it's not as popular, as well known as some of the other movies in that era, like Lost Boys, for example. And maybe it's because it's a little bit of a harder sell. Like it's a little bit darker, it's a little bit bleaker. It's not as fun or funny as like Lost Boys, maybe. Man, it's a good movie. It's Catherine Bigelow directing that, and she's got a really good cast. And I'll give you a slight clue to the answer to this question. Catherine Bigelow was married to James Cameron back in the day, and so a lot of the people in Near Dark are people that also worked with James Cameron. The actors worked with James Cameron as well. He's kind of worked with them multiple times. So there's a clue for you. But this movie, yeah, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend it. If you like vampire movies, this is kind of a must-see. It's really great. It's just very stylish, and the performances pretty much across the board are really great, but this is the stand-up performance. And this is why, like, again, I'm not great with names. I don't know if you had told me, if the question was name the character, I probably wouldn't have got it right. But I know exactly who they're talking about. I'm like 99% sure I know exactly who they're talking about when they say the character Severin. And if you've seen Near Dark, you probably do too. I'm guessing a lot of you seen Near Dark. Like I said, it's a classic. It's a horror classic, kind of a must see for the horror vampire education. So lock in your answer. If you don't know it, make a guess. And try your best. But go ahead and lock in your answer because I'm going to do my answer right now. So lock it in. Pencils down, and I'm going to go ahead and make my guess. Of course, Bill Paxton, legendary, rest in peace, legendary actor from Aliens and other movies. And the card does confirm Bill Paxton. Yes, Bill Paxton. Yeah, he is the vicious vampire. That's kind of the giveaway there. Even if you don't know the name, that's kind of the giveaway there. And he really is a scene stealer in this movie. He's so good, and he was good in everything, man. Bill Paxton was a great actor. I really enjoyed him as a character actor. So anyways, that's going to be our card question today. And let me know in the comments below if you got it right or not. And if you didn't get it right, what did you guess? Was it something funny? I love funny wrong answers, so give me those in the comments below. And give me, again, any recommendations for zombie movies or any other movies that you think I should see that I haven't seen before. If I haven't seen before, chances are I might do a video on it in the future. So keep the recommendations coming because you've been giving some good ones. But for now, we're going to go ahead and stop talking about zombies, stop talking about movies, and go ahead and wait till next week. We'll talk about something else completely different. But until then, it's class dismissed.